Today we are going to see this lesson Connecting the Dots by Steve Jobs. Now, most of you are pretty familiar with this name, Steve Jobs. No need telling about it, right? Why? Because, of course, Steve Jobs, he was an American inventor, designer, entrepreneur who was the co founder as well as a chief executive and the chairperson of Apple Computers. Now, you youngsters, you already know about this Apple's revolutionary products, which includes the iPod, iPhone, iPad. Well, yes, of course, they're seen dictating the evolution of modern technology, and you're all already know about a lot about it, right? So no need telling there. But in this chapter, he's sharing mainly three of his life experiences, and he wants you to give you all some message. Really good messages these are. Now let us start reading the chapter. Steve Jobs, 1955 to 2011. He was an American entrepreneur, business magnate, inventor, industrial designer. He was the chairman, chief executive officer, and co founder of Apple. He is widely recognized as one of the pioneers of the microcomputer revolution of the 1970s and 1980s. Now, before I start reading the chapter, let me tell you something about him. Steve Jobs, in his early years of school or college, was always an intellectual, innovative, and unique kid. But his youth was confused with the frustration over formal schooling. After high school, Jobs enrolled at Reed College in Portland, but this direction was lacking somewhere. He was confused. So he simply dropped out of college right after 6 months and spent next 18 months enjoying creative classes where he learnt calligraphy, which is a course which he developed, which the one course which developed his interest later on in typography. Now, the reason why am I telling you all this? It is, you can say, connected or it is related to his first experience that he is going to share with us. So, now let us start reading it. Today, I want to tell you three stories from my life. That's it. Only three stories. The first story is about connecting the dots. Now, what is meant by this connecting the dots? We will see the meaning of this later on. I dropped out of Reed College after first 6 months. Dropped out means he left simply. But then stayed around as a drop-in. That means he started visiting for another classes, or you can say some other classes, creative classes, for 18 months before I really quit. Looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. That's what he's saying. I could stop taking the required classes that did not interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked interesting. Now, what he's saying that he didn't like certain classes, so he simply stopped attending them, and then he started attending some other creative classes where he learned, of course, as I said earlier, calligraphy, which was at that point it seemed interesting to him. Further, he says, I didn't have a dorm room. Dorm room means dormitory, like a hostel. So I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5 cents deposit to buy food with, and I would walk 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. Now, see, at that time, he didn't have much of, you can say, resources or the money. So he was what doing? He was doing a little bit of hard work. And what was it? Hard work. Two things he has mentioned. That is returning Coke bottles simply for 5 cents deposit, which it was giving him, and by using those 5 cents deposit, he was having food. And every Sunday night, he used to visit Hare Krishna temple, which was 7 miles away from that his hostel. but he still loved it. Now, here you can get the idea of his, you can say, free thinking attitude. Later on, you can, if you read his biography, you will come to know that he even traveled to India in search of spiritual enlightenment. He was like that only. He was a free thinker, and his curious and intuitive mind was always ready to absorb new ideas from other religions. Then, after that, he says, I loved it. And much of what I stumbled into, that means he finally got into, by following my curiosity and intuition, turned out to be the priceless later on. Okay. Now, I would like you to, point out this word priceless, what he means by priceless. That sometimes certain unimportant activities that we do right now, even kids, you also, I'm telling you, that sometimes you may feel that uh, some hobby or some activity that you are pursuing right now, you may find it, very simple or unimportant at this stage of your life. That means you will always think that, okay, now this hobby or this activity that I'm doing, how is it going to help me out in my future plans, my career plans, my profession? But let me tell you, kids, the important thing is to keep your creative mind always alive and active. And that is what Steve Jobs did, and which turned him into an inventor and designer. That is why he's saying that the very activity, that whatever he was doing in those days, he found that they were nothing but priceless for him, very important. They turn out to be very important for him later on, in the later on stage of his life. That is what he's saying. These activities, they unknowingly led him to his path of success. Okay. Further, he says, here is one example. Reed College offered perhaps the best calligraphy instructions in the country. Because I had to take calligraphy class, I learnt about serif and sans serif typefaces, about what makes great typography great. Now, the serif and sans serif typefaces, they are nothing but technical terms which are coming under those activities or calligraphy. 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me, and we designed it all into the Mac. That means computer he's talking about. If I had never dropped in on that course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces, or for that matter, even proportionally spaced fonts. Now, got all of you got the point, that how that calligraphy classes helped him later on to design even Mac also. And since Windows just copied Mac, it is likely no personal computer would have them. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very clear looking backward 10 years later. Now, here, this connecting dot I would like to explain you. See, if what he's saying is, if you keep looking forward only, you won't be able to associate previous or the past ideas to the next, or the idea new ideas in the future. So what he's saying is, when he was in college, he did not realize this. Later, after 10 years, he realized it. And then he associated his calligraphy classes with his designing of Mac, or later on how he used it in his profession, or you can say in his business, how he made use of it. That time he did not realize it, but later on, after 10 years, he realized it. Then he says further, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust the dots will somehow connect in your future. Now, what are these dots he's talking about? Dots are nothing but, you can say, particular stage or an event or a phase in your life. So what he's saying is, at that whatever activity you are doing at a certain stage, or whatever events are happening in your life at that point, or a certain stage or a phase in your life, You have to fully focus on that. You have to trust it. You know, you cannot say that, okay, it is, why should I be doing it? It is a complete waste or something, and it is of no use to me. That should not be the attitude. That is what he's saying. You have to trust that dot, those dots, those phases, those stages in your life, or those activities that you are doing in your life. You have to trust in some things. Further, he says, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. This approach has never let me down, and it has made all the difference in my life. That means he definitely he's believing in this sort of, you can say, philosophy, that he's believing his destiny, life, karma, whatever. These things he will trust them. And this kind of approach, this kind of mentality, or this kind of thinking has given him whatever success he had so far. Next, he says, my second story is about love and loss. I found what I loved to do early in life was Steve Wozniak, and I started Apple when I was 20. In 10 years, Apple had grown from just the two of us in a garage into $2 billion company. And then I got fired. It was devastating. Now see, when you uh, create something which gains so much of success, and that too, starting from zero, from scratch, because he's saying that he and his partner was, they started this Apple company right from, only merely from a garage, and then it became such a big company. But then because of certain events, because of something that happened between maybe a clash or disagreement, he was fired. He had to give up all, he had to give up his company. So it was pretty frustrating for him. It was a severe shock for him. But then he says something slowly began to dawn on me, because he was capable of thinking, and began to dawn on him in the sense he began something started becoming clearer to him. I still loved what I did, and so I decided to start over. That means he did not give up. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. He forgot his painful past, or you can say painful loss that he had, and he moved on. And he moved on with what? That the same passion, and that the same hope that he would create something new again. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. He became even more creative person. And during the next 5 years, I started a company next, another company named Pixar. And I fell in love with an amazing woman who would become my wife. Pixar is now the world's most successful animation studio. Apple bought next. I returned to Apple, and the technology we developed there at Next is at the heart of Apple's current renaissance. Renaissance means he revived the same company, Apple. There was a revival, there was a rebirth. And Lauren and I have a wonderful family together. His wife is talking about. So the message here is what? Sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick. That means suddenly some great shock can come, and there is a sudden loss also, disappointments, frustration, depression. But what he is telling you, never, don't lose faith. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. And if you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle, don't stop. What he's saying is that one should always search for something or anything which you can do passionately, something that you love to do, something you can do wholeheartedly, sincerely. So it is a good message, right? To say, my third story is about death. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. My doctor advised me to go home and get my affairs in order, which is doctor's code for prepare to die now. I lived with that diagnosis all day. Later that evening, I had a biopsy. It turned out to be a very rare form of pancreatic cancer that is curable with surgery. I had the surgery and I'm fine now. So you can say that this was the closest I have been to facing death, and I hope is the closest I get for a few more decades. Having lived through it, I can now say this to you. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Now, this is one again important message he's trying to give you all. Next, he says, don't be trapped by dogma. Now, what is this dogma? Dogma is nothing but you can say a belief or a set of beliefs by group of people or community or you can say organization. And most of the time, because of this dogmatic view, we are not able to think by using our own inner voice. That is what he's saying. He says further, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinion drown out your own inner voice. Think what your inner voice is trying to tell you, your own gut feeling, your own intuition, your very own rational thoughts. There is a chance that such a dogmatic views they can suppress your own inner voice. So don't let that happen ever. Okay, next he says, and most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Previously, also in the previous message, also he had said, only do passionately and wholeheartedly what you love to do, because ultimately that is what is going to give you satisfaction. Next, he says, when I was young, there was an amazing publication called The Whole Earth Catalog. In the final issue, on the back cover, they put a photograph of an early morning country road. Beneath it were the words, stay hungry, stay foolish. It was their farewell message as they signed off. I have always wished that for myself. And now, as you graduate to begin anew, I wish that for you. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Now, when he's saying that you people are going to get graduated soon and to begin anew, means now you're about to head for the new road, which is having new life choices. You are going to start a new career and profession and many other things. But here, this simple message, stay hungry and stay foolish. This is again one of my favorite. It's it like you may say that it sounds so simple, but there is a if you think about it, it has got a very deep meaning. Say, stay hungry means what? Never let yourself settle with less. Always aim for higher goals. Be ambitious. And stay foolish means be light-hearted. Don't worry about the bad past. Be ready to take new risk, new accept new challenges. Someone who takes risk in his life often is considered foolish by others, isn't it? But to choose a path full of adventures, you sometimes need that little foolishness too, right? So, have a good day, all of you.